designed to move adoption laws forward. That's the whole purpose of it. She did testimony in Congress. I looked at her testimony. I looked at videos of her speaking. Again, event planner intel, and then of course, the event program and the invitation to kind of get a flavor of how this was going to come down. Now, during this discover phase, which is first, you're going to get all these puzzle pieces collected for whatever your topic is, for your high stakes presentation. And the reason you do that is you're going to start formulating some good ideas ahead of the next step, which is to plan. All right. Now, planning, we've talked about already. There's two parts to planning. Aim for impact. You now know how to use that process to aim for impact. You now know that you've got to start with that audience analysis, that intention, the outcome that you want to see, and that single solitary message. All right. For a high stakes presentation, that single message is your big idea. All right. I'm going to be talking about the word big idea throughout this. The second part to planning is to build out the framework. All right. You notice we're not talking about slides. We're building a framework based on that AIM model, all that hard work you did on that worksheet, and all the great stuff that piqued your interest during that discover step. Because you've done that hard work, you've done that research, you're a lot smarter now than you were before you started. All right? Because this discover step informs the plan. So what does this framework look like? It is a deliberate roadmap that's going to get you from the beginning to the middle to the end. It gives you this vision for your speech because you know how you're going to start, how you're going to move through it, and how you're going to get to the end. There are 7 elements of this framework. I would encourage all of you to title every speech or presentation you do from now on. And when I gave you those recommendations, when we were talking about the single message, often your single solitary message is the title of your speech. It's not something you share with the audience. It helps you stay focused, right? We need to recognize and affirm the voices of women. For the folks here in the room, I gave them a copy of that speech so they can see that, and I will get that to all the folks online when I get back to my office today. So often the title, your single message is the title of your speech, and it helps you stay focused on what you're doing. The second piece of the plan is the audience intention message. Of course, you're going to do that because now you know how. Third element of that framework is a strong intentional opening. And the opening is not, I'm glad to be here. I love seeing all you faces, thank you for this. That's not your opening. Your opening is something that gets your audience on the edge of their seats. And again, I read you the opening we used for that women's history speech. And there's plenty of other examples I can share. But it's got to be something that gets that audience on the edge of their seats. You're going to figure that out in the framework. The fourth piece is you're going to have headlines in the framework. All right, a logical flow. Remember we said you don't go in circles? You have a logical flow. First, I'm going to talk about this, and I'll use Anisha's example since it's top of mind. First, I'm going to paint the picture that there's a gratitude gap, and then I'm going to go to the connection between gratitude and morale, and then I'm going to make the connection between morale and revenue. All right, so there's a logical flow there. You're going to map that out. You're going to say, hey, what stories do I have to tell that relate to these topics? You're going to be very intentional and think about, Kathy, Commons Care stories. I bet you have a million of them. How can you inject them in your next talk when you talk about the fabulous program that you've done? Be thinking about what those stories are and jot them down in your framework. I want to tell the story about the employee that had cancer and we did this and it made a difference, whatever it is. Okay. Transitions. How are you going to get from point to point logically? There must be transitions between sentences or you will lose your audience. So transitions must be intentional. And then, of course, you must have a strong intentional close. Don't just say, we're out of time, that's all the time we have, see ya. It needs to be some kind of an impactful close that is intentional, that you leave them with the final words. And I would beg you not to skip this step of planning the framework, because the framework is your roadmap, and you should not write anything until you know where you're going. Because a solid framework prevents rework. And I'm going to give you an example. This is another thing, Dr. K, that I can share online as far as a framework. I'm going to pass this around. You don't need to read the whole thing. I want you to pay attention to the headlines, the message, some of the notes of where we're going to go, so that you get a feel for this is how to map out the framework. So you can just skim through it. And you can see where this speech was going, right in the very beginning. All right, the next piece, after you do the plan, so you've got your aim, you've got your framework, the next step is scripting it out. And let me just tell you, if you have a solid framework where you have logically thought about all these things, the beginning, the middle, the end, how you're gonna get there, your message, all driven by that audience intel, your speech will write itself. And I'm not kidding. The struggle goes away because all you do at that point is fill in the blanks of your framework. And I'm gonna reiterate again, we still haven't talked about slides. All right, so we're 3 steps in and we still haven't talked about slides. Reminder to make sure in your framework that you're thought about egos, your agency to be up there talking about this. Kathy, you run that program. You need to make sure you're communicating that. The logos, the logic of the argument, and the pathos. Where have you interjected that emotion? Your framework is not done if you have not considered all 3 of those elements, right? You have an option to do a full script all the way as something would be delivered, or talking points. Different leaders like different things. If you're a person that prefers to talk from talking points, often it depends on the venue and the opportunity, I would still encourage you to go through the exercise of writing out the full manuscript so that you know the flow and then distill that down to talking points. All right, so that's kind of a best practice there. During the editing phase, and yes, you need to edit, you're going to cut out extra examples. Sometimes we feel compelled when we're putting things on paper to give 3 examples when 1 would suffice. That's a great way to cut your presentation down if it's getting too long. Sometimes 1 example will do it. And also there's a lot of double talk sometimes. Wait, I said that here, I say it again here, I can cut out one of those. So you need to be very rigorous when you edit your speech to cut the fat. And audiences don't have the patience for stuff that's extra. Make your point, get in, get out. Don't use 10 different examples when 1 will do. Then you're gonna wanna do a line edit. Often, and we did this kind of on the fly today, some of the sentences that you started with were too long, and we shrunk them down. That needs to be part of your scripting process because we all tend to overwrite too much. And you've got to take that discipline to say, I can take these extra words out. Every word you say should count. So the line editing process is very important. Every speech is supposed to be read aloud. So you can't write it unless you hear yourself saying it aloud. You will be amazed when you do that, how much stuff that you can't say. You literally, physically can't get the words out. Because you might be able to read it as an article, but when you try to say it, there's tongue twisters in there and you will stumble. That's the kind of stuff you want to pull out and fix, come up with a shorter word. I'm working with somebody right now, a quick example. She's a former person that worked in the oil and gas industry, and she had a tongue twister that had the word mudlogger in it. Now, if you try to say like a lot of M words with mudlogger, you can't do it. You physically can't do it. We had to rewrite that. That's the kind of stuff that you do toward the end, like, wow, where am I stumbling? Because you don't want to stumble. You need to fix it with a shorter word. And then she was using the word exploring. I said, looking for oil, looking for gas. She goes, why looking? I said, because it's 2 syllables instead of 1. I said, it sounds better. Looking, go. So syllables can make a difference. Why take a 10-syllable word when you can do it in 2? So that's the kind of stuff you fix when you do those line edits. Another thing you need to do to help you with delivery, and we're going to talk about this really quickly, is to format your manuscript using color coding so that your head sees how it should be delivered. And I'm going to pass this around. Again, Dr. K, I can do this offline on another resource page. There's yellow highlights on there. The green pieces are the headlines. The red pieces are the words you got to emphasize. There are arrows that says your voice should go up and down arrows that say your voice should go down. I'm going to pass a second example around so that you can see what that looks like from a formatting standpoint. Why go to all this trouble? Because if you do, you will set yourself up for success. You will not stumble. If you have a difficult word, my maiden name was Armbruster. Okay? Some people might have trouble doing that. When there's a proper name that's difficult to pronounce, I will slash that out for my speakers. So they intentionally say Armbruster. So think about that. There's ways to format your stuff to set yourself up for success. The next piece is design. This is the part where you decide if you need slides. All right, and again, we're talking about rich visuals. We're not talking about things with a lot of words if you're the presenter. You want folks to focus on you and not them. So ask that question, do I even need slides? And I will tell you that the woman that gave the adoption speech did not use slides. She relied on herself to deliver that story. This is why design is step 4, not step 1. You avoid that whole patchwork quilt business, and your design flows from your script. So you do it once. How many folks have done their PowerPoints over and over and over again? Let's try to do things once. And if you can do it once, if your slides flow from your script, which is based on your framework, which is based on your plan, which is based on your research. This intentional process will save you time. Coaching. Yes, we all need a coach to ensure the delivery. A person who is going to give you honest feedback. Now, I would argue in your own organizations, you have a colleague that you trust that can give you feedback. So we need to be coaches for one another. I do that as part of my business, but I guarantee you have a trusted person. You don't need a yes person. You need somebody in your organization to say, Kathy, you're really struggling over that, or I can't follow what you're saying. Somebody's going to give you honest feedback. Coaching should be part of your process if you have a high stakes presentation to give. That person should be sharing with you good things and things that you need to improve upon. And we're going to talk about delivery. I'm looking at the time here to kind of finish this out. There are some cases that you need to tweak your script for the end when your coach, let's say you're relying on a colleague, is saying you're struggling with that. It's okay to tweak your script, because if you can't do it, that's not going to set yourself up in the best possible light. The coaching piece works better one-on-one. I do not advise you having your whole team come in and give you feedback, because it's a very vulnerable process. Find one person that you trust that can give you feedback, that will give you honest feedback, and make that your person, all right? In your handouts, I've given you delivery pitfalls. These are things I see time and time again where people make mistakes. I want to call just a couple of them to your attention, because if we can fix these ladies, we're going to be so much more awesome. This apologizing thing I see all the time. If you mispronounce a name, don't say, oh, sorry. Don't say it. Fix the name and go on. You don't need to apologize for that. All right? You're in control of the room. Keep the control. Do not apologize for that. A lot of folks struggle with the imposter syndrome. I work with a lot of women who talk about that right away. Don't believe that imposter syndrome. Instead, believe you have a gift to give the audience. Reframe what you are doing for the audience. You are giving them a gift, and it's not about you. It's about them. So it's reframing that whole piece. You were invited to speak for a reason. Take the agency and do it. And Dana, like I said, I'm going to be really interested to hear how your piece comes out. Take the agency you've been given. You were invited to speak for a reason. And again, do not focus on yourself. Focus on that audience every single time, and that'll get rid of that imposter syndrome. Not rehearsing enough. My best practice is be done with your remarks at least a week ahead, so that you have a week ahead to get familiar with and internalize those remarks. It's going to make all the difference on delivery day. If folks have any questions on these delivery pitfalls, I can answer those offline, but it truly does make a difference if you're aware of these, if you're aware of them. That's why I've constructed them as pitfalls, because this is stuff I see time and time again. If you're aware of these, then you won't do them when you're practicing. And you can even use these as a checklist. You got a question?
Just a quick
Yes.
one.
Yes.
Upspeak. What
Yes.
is that?
Okay, this happens when, I really think I gotta go to the toy store today. Have you heard women do this? Like they constantly end on upspeak. I really think I have to go meet with a client at the end of the day today.
The tone.
Yes, you're going up.
Okay.
And it's really a bad habit, because you don't sound like you know what you're talking about. When you have a firm statement, you want to end on a down note, because that says, don't argue with me, this is the truth, down. When you ask a question, your voice needs to go up. Hey, what are we doing for lunch today? Your voice goes up. That's natural. You wouldn't say, what are we doing for lunch today? A question, your voice should go up. A firm statement, your voice should go down. And when you have things that don't match, If you are making an unequivocal statement like Anisha's piece, gratitude has an impact on morale, like my voice went down, don't argue with me. But if you said gratitude has an impact on morale, you don't believe me. It doesn't match. So how you deliver it needs to match what you're saying. At the end of the coaching piece, it is now showtime. You have rehearsed, you've been coached, you're confident, you're ready to deliver, you are ready for showtime. But this is a high stakes presentation, so you're not finished. Before showtime, remember that coach that's working with you? Sit that person in your front row. That person needs to go with you for the presentation for two reasons: to cheer you on, because you can look at that person and say, I know Sandra's in my corner, right? Really, really helps to have that person there. And then after that presentation's over, if you've built that good relationship and they've given you honest feedback on the preparation side, I want Sandra to tell me how I could have done better. So you're gonna debrief with her. You're gonna do your own reflection, but you're gonna trust that coach to be with you every step of the way. You're gonna talk about what did we do well, what could have gone better. And both of you need to weigh in on that. Even after showtime, you're not done when there's a high stakes presentation, because there's one more step, and it's amplify. If you have a big idea, and Dana, I'm gonna use your example, you have a big idea to change your profession. So what are you gonna do after that to amplify that? So think about what that might look like. You could be writing, let's say, a blog post for your industry association newsletter. You could be doing a video that you post on social media. And I'll give you some more examples. In organizations, news releases that talk about so-and-so spoke at a conference. I talk about newsletters, social media, blogs, video snippets. You could go on a podcast. I heard Kathy say she went on a podcast. Continue to promote that big idea. I once heard a commencement speech for a client, and they had it on their university media as well. And then they took video snippets and pushed out some of her key messages on social, amplifying her message as an alumna who was able to speak at that university. So when you take the time to amplify, it can lead to your next opportunity. And I'll bring you back to that young woman I coached on the leadership side. She did such a good job. Now she was asked to go and be the spokesperson when the TV crews came out. All right. So she is continuing to elevate her career. She is amplifying. She is definitely amplifying the message. From a business results standpoint, this is what you have to do to get that business result. And I'm going to finish this out by telling you what happened with the adoption speech woman. How did the story end? So she went ahead and delivered that speech. And after that first speech, this was in 2023, folks came up to her and said, we agree with you and we want to work with you to get it done. They need you in. So 3 bills have now been passed in the state of Idaho. The first one mandates adoption education. The second one bans unlicensed matchmakers from placing kids for adoption because they were basically gaming the system, making a lot of money, and they weren't doing what they needed to do. The third law removes the cap on all the birth mother's expenses. It was like $500. No way does that cover it. So they removed that cap so that if you want to go for adoption, you got to help the birth mothers pay for things. They got rid of the cap. So 3 laws were passed. Then, once they had that success in that state, she got invited on a national stage that was attended by lawmakers from across the US. And her new big idea, it was a different audience, it was all the legislators, was this. You, Mr. or Mrs. Legislator, you can champion legislation that shines a new light on adoption and makes adoption easier for birth mothers so more women choose it. That was our big idea. The power's in your hands, legislators. You gotta do this, shine a light on adoption because it's way different than it was 20 years ago, and we need to make it easier so more women choose it. She went on the road, and so she texted me when she got finished. There was a lot of VIPs there. She said, the speech went so well, these legislators now have adoption on their radar. It's exactly what she wanted them to do. And we gave template legislation with a QR code, so these legislators could download it right there. So no excuses. Just fill in the blanks, folks. Download the template legislation and take it to your state and get it done. She made it really easy for them. And she said, it's so cool. Many legislators have come to talk to me. So she has set herself up as the subject matter expert for that. She built this new, these new relationships, and now truly they are working to introduce this in their own state legislatures. So I'd like to wrap up in this way. My first challenge for you is to take that AIM for Impact tool and start using it with every single speech or presentation you do. Focus on that audience, analyze that audience, because you want to change that audience in some way. Identify your intentions. What are the outcomes you want to see? And then commit to that solitary message. Don't boil the ocean, make it specific and in a phrase, in a sentence that is actionable. The second challenge is to follow that same 7-step process every single time to get a clear business result from a high-stakes presentation. Follow that process to avoid the struggle. And be intentional every time you speak. Choose to implement these two tools and, take the stress away, take the anxiety away. What questions do you have?
I have a couple. So when is the best time to engage with a coach? Before you even have a presentation, or you're like calling like, hey, I'm gonna talk?
It depends on what you're looking for from the coach. If you need a thought partner to figure this out, the coach can brainstorm with you on that to get your storyline, your audience intention message right, because that has to be done first, right? If you're looking for a coach for delivery, that needs to be done as soon as you've got your presentation done and your slides done. I'm ready. But I will tell you, from a best practice standpoint, I will not work with somebody unless they put in the hard work themselves, because they need to get very familiar with remarks and rehearse on their own, because then the coaching becomes more valuable. You're not doing it rough. You're not going into it really rocky. You've done the work yourself and you said, okay, I've done as much as I can do. I need some outside feedback. Don't have a coach come in on a first read, because it's really painful. You're not ready, you don't feel good about it. Get it to the point where you've put in the work yourself and you say, I'm ready for some honest feedback. I'm feeling good about it, but I would like some honest feedback. Put the work in first yourself on the delivery piece. But often, it's nice to have a thought partner up front to kind of work through some of the stuff we did so that you're going in the right direction with that AIM for Impact concept. Does that help, Kathy?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Was there a second question you had, a follow-on after that, or?
Yeah, I was kind of curious, Kathy, what do you think your payoff was doing your message in front of or do you think, I was curious because I would do something like Kathy did in front of a bunch of facility people, but there is no payoff for evolution to do that.
Yeah.
It really is, because I want to change the industry.
That really was, but that organization, we always share best practices, so we're all different sizes and organizations, so they're really, for Cummins, there wasn't an ROI going into it as far, other than looking as a thought leader and getting more opportunities to pour into the industry and impact their corner of the world, and that's how Jill and I always, when we talk in the industry things, and Jill talks in industry stuff all the time, it's always, how are we elevating the industry? It's not a direct on Cummins, I guess.
I would say reputation, which everybody, that is the payoff potentially. Sometimes it's reputation. You're gonna elevate your reputation, Kathy. And is an elevated reputation important to you? Then be all in. If an elevated reputation is important to you, and sometimes that is the result, because reputation has monetary impacts, I would argue. We have time for no more questions, is that right?
Just want to be careful for anybody that has to
Yes,
piece off at noon,
Okay.
especially for our online friends.
sure. Dr. K, I know you have some closing remarks. I am available to answer any questions that maybe pop up later, but I would like to turn it back to Dr. K. I've given you your marching order. So, Dr. K?
Sure. Thank you so very much. Let me turn my camera back on. There we go. Thank you so very much. This was great. And I'm just looking at the comments in the chat, Teresa, and that's exactly what everyone is saying. Amazing presentations, and thank you so much for these tidbits and what you shared with them, because this is awesome. So we thank you for your commitment to WeBEC ORV and this invaluable feedback that you were able to provide with all of our attendees today. So just as we wrap, a couple of things that I want to do. Let me share my screen. So
Dr.
I
K, while
always
you're
like
doing
to,
that, can I interrupt you for 1 second? Were you able to
Yep,
share
sure.
those QR codes?
which QR codes?
So that's in the last slide of the presentation, have the QR codes if they want to download these worksheets, et cetera.
Yeah, I'll send the, they'll get the link to your presentation within the
Perfect.
next few days. So everyone will get that as well as the recording.
Okay, there on the last slide, there's 2 QR codes where you can learn more, so I'd encourage you to look at that last slide.
I'll pull them back up too when she's done.
Great.
So just to go over some of our upcoming events that we have, on the 24th, navigating policy changes, protecting your message and brand. And so this is a really great dynamic workshop for our WBEs to hear from some folks that are talking about things that are going on right now with the political changes in climate, and not to really just stay in that moment and get hyper focused in that moment, but also how to pivot and protect your brand and your messaging. So this is a free webinar. Take a moment, scan the QR code that you see on your screen there, and you will be able to get to our calendar and with all of our events there. And then also March 26th, if you are in or near the Dayton area, we have our WBE Connects coming back. That's the first one of 2025. Teresa is actually one of our hosts for the Dayton WBE Connects, so you'll get to chat with her there. And then we have several of our doing business with our corporate partner sessions that are coming up the end of March and beginning of April. We also have a WB Connect in the Toledo area for those that want to venture up that way. And then April 17th and 18th is Bold and Brilliant, and that is our conference for women of color and allies. It will be in Columbus, Ohio. Registration is open for that as well, so would love to see you all there. And then lastly, I just want to take a quick moment and ask for you all, if you are not accessing this on your phone, please take out your phones and scan this QR code. This will take you to a brief survey that will allow us to provide obtain additional feedback from you all as to how this presentation went. We will share this feedback with Teresa as well. I always strive to get as much information as possible in order to create even better workshops as we continue to move forward. So please take a moment and do that. If you are on your phone or not able to scan this QR code, this will the link to the survey will also be sent to you via email. So if you can't do it in this moment right now, don't worry, because you will have the opportunity to do it again later. And that is all that I have. I know, Courtney, you said that you wanted to share your screen again so you can share those QR codes that Teresa was talking about. So you can go ahead and pop those up. I think that's it, everybody. I want to thank you so much for your time. I know this was a lot of information to digest, but I appreciate you all for, one, your willingness to participate, as well as for those who were that were willing to share and get that direct one-on-one feedback from Teresa. That was great, right? And so I'm looking forward to seeing how you all are able to use this information that you've learned in today's webinar to speak more like a leader. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.